Yo, what's going on, guys? So today I want to talk about Flask rework in 3.15. So basically, after playing around with Flasks for a while, I want to talk about what are my thoughts about the rework and how we can actually turn some of the Flask changes into the positives. So first of all, I want to say that I am actually playing the Pathfinder this league, so my opinion might be a bit biased because I get a lot of Flask duration, increased Flask charges gained, and so on from my ascendancy and from my tree. So I don't have that big of an issues with the Flasks. But that's actually my first opinion, that a lot of people thought that Pathfinder is gonna be dead because of the Flask changes and so on. Overall, a lot of Flasks have been nerfed, so because of that, Pathfinder also got nerfed. But I do believe because of that, Flasks has been nerfed for a lot of other builds, but Pathfinder still can get a lot of usage from them because of his effectiveness of Flasks and Nature's Boon, which gives him free Flask charges every few seconds. So first of all, I want to say that using like free life Flasks on a Pathfinder is really nice. So for example, I would go with free life Flask like this, with instant one on bosses, and when you are just fighting bosses, you can constantly just use your instant life Flask and they will be constantly being filled, so you get a lot of healing from that. Second thing I want to say is mana issues are completely solved when you are a Pathfinder. You just use your mana flask and you basically get infinite mana. As you can see here, I have literally no mana issues during my mana flask, and when you are fighting bosses you also have infinite mana flask, so you are good on that. But obviously there is a lot of issues after the changes, and the one that actually hurts Pathfinder and overall evasion builds a lot is the nerf to the evasion on Flasks. So first nerf was that Jade Flask no longer gives 3k evasion, only 1.5k. Also the suffix no longer gives up to 100% increase evasion, only 60. And Steep Knight Flask gives 20% more evasion instead of 100 increase. So because of that, with Grace, which gives you a big boost to evasion, with increased effect of Flask on both of the Flasks, and 52% increase evasion mod, when I use both of my Flasks, I have only 33,000 evasion, which, in case you don't know, it is really, really low. Previously, when you were using Queen of the Forest, you need 45,000 evasion to reach 50% movement speed cap on Queen of the Forest, and you were able to gain that just with Jade Flask, without Steep Knight Flask, and with Grace, and if you had some evasion gear and evasion mods on your minimation passives on your tree. But now, even with both Steep Knight Flask, both evasion flask and increased effect, and 50% overall increased effect of flasks on my tree, I still can't even get to that point. So that's actually really, really sad, because evasion, even without Queen of the Forest, was actually in my opinion one of the worst way to build your defense. Like getting a lot of armor or energy shield was much better, and right now it feels even worse. I do agree that getting so much evasion from Flasks was pretty bad, so I agree with removing the evasion from them, because previously when you played evasion build and you used your Flasks, you felt pretty good, you had nice defenses, but as soon as your Flasks dropped, you were just one-shotted and you died. So it is a good thing that evasion is not like as reliant on Flask, but I would expect them to add some kind of other sources of evasion. For example, on gear, maybe just buff amount of evasion you can get on gear, or maybe on your tree, or just something. I just think nerfing the evasion that you get from Flask should be recompensated somehow. So now let's talk about the good thing, which are the enchants that you get from Enkindling Orb and Instilling Orb. So first, Instilling Orb can give you one of the 16 enchants that you can check on PoE If you type Instilling Orb, you can check all of them. So obviously there are a few ones that are really good for being still, I would say, pseudo ailment immune. So these flasks will be used when you get frozen, chilled, or shocked. If you have these enchants, and you can get on that flask suffix that gives you freeze, shock, or ignite. Well, not immunity, but remove shock, chill, or ignite, or freeze when this flask is used. So this will automate your ailment immunity flasks. But there are also some other ones that gives you basically quality of life. So these are these three, so used when an adjacent flask is used. So if you have that on all of your utility flasks, you only have to press one of them and other ones will be automatically used. Second was reuse at the end of flask effect. So this way, I think I have one of them. A second. Here, reuse at the end of flask effect. So I just press it once, and after it is used, it will be used again. So this way you pretty much automated your flask usage if you have that on all of your utility flask. But in a lot of cases, used when charges reach full is better way of getting the automated flasks, because if, let's say, your flask is used and then you reach your 50 charges by, for example, killing some monsters, your flask will be reused again, and basically your charges will not be wasted. So this way you are not wasting that many charges, because with this flask it is only used at the end, and at that point your flask might be already at 100% charges. So overall it is a bit better, but it's not that big of a deal which one to use. Used when charges reach full, or reuse at the end of flask effect. Both of them are pretty nice. So all of the other ones are pretty much useless, I would say, like use when you use a guard skill, travel skill, and so on. There is only one more which is actually really interesting and really powerful, and this one is used when you take a savage hit. So it can be applied to a lot of different flasks. For example, the most common one is Forbidden Taste, which will heal you for 80% up to even 100% of your life on use. And if you have that enchant, basically when you take savage hit, which is at least 15% of your life, this flask will be used and instantly just heal you. Also, it will apply a dot, which will deal you chaos damage per second, but it can be mostly countered with being chaos res capped. So overall, it is really powerful mechanic, and you can just constantly be healed. The other way to get some usage of that enchant is through Pafinder ascendancy. If you would get Master Surgeon, you would recover 6% of your life when you use a flask. So you could technically get that mod on all of your utility flask, and basically when you take the savage hit, you will be healed by, well, let's just say 3 of them, so 6 times 3, so for 24% of your life, if 3 of the flasks will be used when you take a savage hit with Master Surgeon. There are probably some other usage of that enchant, like let's say you have dodge flask, so you don't want to use it all the time. You could just use it when you take a savage hit to get some defense when you are on low life. The last flask I want to talk about is the iron flask. So this is a new flask and it is used for ward. So not that many people are using it, but it is actually a pretty powerful flask. So when it's used, you gain 200 ward. With my 50% flask effect, I get 300, which is actually quite a lot. Also, it will restore ward on use. Currently, ward is being restored automatically every 5 seconds after you get a hit. But with this flask, you can basically on demand restore your ward, which basically acts as a life flask, but for ward. So if you are going for the ward build, it is a really powerful flask. And also you can use it with something like savage hit. So if you take a hit and that hit will use all of your ward and 15% of your life, this flask would be automatically be reused and you will automatically regain the ward. Also there is the second orb, which gives you the increased effect of the flask on your flasks, but it will prevent from this flask will prevent it from gaining the charges during its effect. So you might think that it's completely useless, which actually in most of the cases it is, because you will just not gain a lot of flask charges for it. But for me personally, the best uses of this flask was through the Quicksilver flask. I don't think I have one with that enchant right now, so let me use one. So this way you will gain 50% increase effect of that flask during its effect, so a bit more movement speed, but it will no longer gain charges when it's being used. So you have to wait until the end, and now it will start regaining charges. So overall, when you are mapping and when you use this flask, usually you move from point 1 to point 2. So you will use this movement speed flask, and after you are there, you will start killing monsters. And let's say your flask is already down. You don't really need it when you are attacking. So you don't really need to be for it to be in use. So at that point you can regain your charges and then you can start running again. So it's overall not like super perfect. It's still a bit annoying, but I would say just for Quicksilver Flask it is a really powerful effect. Also for bossing, for example, you can get additional 50% flask effect during Dying Sun. So this way you get 4 projectiles instead of 3 because of my 50% flask effectiveness on 3. And this way you can basically just burst bosses down if you have a lot of damage during that Dying Sun burst window. And it also can be used on other unique flasks just to burst down the bosses. So that's gonna be pretty much it. Overall, I would like to see some kind of evasion buffs. Overall, I think Flasks are in an okay spot. They can be easily automated. They still provide quite a lot of power, but not as much power as before. And right now, I would say Pafinder is in a really good spot, with providing you basically 100% uptime on all of your flasks, a lot of flask effectiveness, and most importantly, just having no issues with mana at all. So highly recommend playing Pathfinder right now. So that's gonna be it. Thanks for watching and see you next time.